Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Destiny Leadership Institute webinar for March. And man, do we ever have an awesome broadcast for you. We welcome all of our students by Zoom and also all the general audience by Facebook Live. And we are going to have an outstanding time tonight. We're going to talk about things that are nuts and bolts stuff that every great leader needs to know, and some stuff that most great leaders wish their team knew and would practice. So we're glad you're here. It's going to be a great time, and you're really going to be blessed tonight because I've got two special guests with me that are going to just rock it all out tonight. As a matter of fact, I'm pretty sure all I have to do is just kind of lob the softball in the air, and then you guys are going to knock it out of the park.
Absolutely.
Home runs. We have Pastor Jared Hight from here at the Crossroads, and Jared and I go way back. And Jared, so glad that you're here and appreciate your insight. Jared has the incredible perspective of not only being able to talk about things from a kind of a millennial perspective, but also doing it. He's co-pastor here or on the pastoral team with his dad and mom, and we're delighted to be here. They're here in the audience tonight with some of their great staff. This church absolutely rocks. And so thank you, Jared, for joining us tonight. And also some of you that are watching are thinking about interns, and man, these leaders, they do their thing leading, but they don't really know what it is to serve. But actually, Jared began as a Destiny intern, and you were the Landon Galloway vintage, right?
I taught him everything he knows. That's what DLI is all about. I taught him everything, let him do it.
And so, so
not true.
You guys killed it. And honestly, some of the best months that I've ever spent in ministries when Jared and Landon were there with us. And honestly, it marked us. I'm not sure we've quite recovered yet from having them both, but these are awesome young men who went on from Destiny after they finished their internship to graduate school, and we're so proud of both of them. Jared, we love you and love your family and excited about the future here at the Crossroads. Why don't you take a second before I introduce this guy and tell us a little bit about what's happening here at the Crossroads.
Well, we have a lot happening, but first of all, we know that Destiny is the best thing, and that we have a covering, we have leaders that love and cherish us and wants to see us grow, not just as individuals, but also in the kingdom of God. And so with Phil and Kathy directing that with Destiny, we just love you so much. And Landon, my buddy, if you're watching, we're so, I love you. And but all of the Destiny team allowing us to be able to guide and in training us and teaching us these different areas. Here at Crossroads, we're in Corinth, Mississippi. It's in the northeast corner. For the ones that don't know about Mississippi, just know that we're right just south of Tennessee and about 15 miles west of Alabama. But I've grown up in this church for 34 years, it's all my life. And here at Crossroads, we're all about community. We're all about we want our church to look just like Walmart. And we want people to know God, find freedom, discover purpose, to make a difference. And we really work hard that everybody is one big team working together. And so we've been seeing how God's been able to do so many great things. As we build up leaders, we can see how God is helping people helping each one of them find the fulfillment and the plan that God has for them so that they can make a difference. And we're being able to see that impact in their families, whether it be from blue collar, white collar, whether it come from broken marriages or marriages have been intact for many years. We're being able to see that be restored. And so it's really awesome.
Well, it's exciting to see what God's doing here. And honestly, the place has just gone through a major facelift. It is beautiful, honestly, really just fantastic. And so we celebrate that with you all. And you guys have such an awesome team, some of which are part of our live audience tonight. So we actually have a live audience tonight. And so you guys make some noise, all right? Yeah. There they are. And so we have ministry friends that are joining us. We're going to have a couple of days of fellowship and a great time together. So we appreciate so much Church of the Crossroads and Pastors Nelson, Pam, Hight, and Jared and Cherie, and the whole team working together to make this time an awesome time. Well, honestly, one of my best friends in the entire world is sitting to my left. He's no stranger to all of you. His name's John Ragsdale, and he is a walking exclamation mark. Honestly, he makes a statement everywhere he goes. John, I love you.
I've never heard that before. I like that.
There you go.
So special.
That needs to be in my bio.
A walking exclamation
Well, you
mark.
talked about him a lot, so
Yeah.
I was timing. So we're going
I want to know, first of all, about the family.
Family's great.
And you've planted an awesome church in that. It's just rocking Nashville from the border to border. So tell us what's happening at the Hills, and we're delighted to have John Ragsdale with us tonight.
Well, I love being here. Thank y'all. I love being here. First of all, being here with you is so special, and being here with J Bubba, that's what I call him. I woke up at 4 a.m. this morning to come down and spend a little time with him, and it was worth all the hours of sleep that I missed to be with him. And then Nelson and Pam and the kids. This church is so special to us. So much of our ministry started right here in Corinth, Mississippi. And so we pastor a church called the Hills Nashville. Matter of fact, we've got 3 DLI students that are watching right now. We've got Danny, we got Alicia, and Justin. What's up, y'all? Y'all shoot me a text and tell me if I look good on camera, okay? Right. Let me know. Love y'all. Glad you're watching. My wife, Kristen, and then we have Evan, who is a junior in college, and we have Davis, who's a junior in high school. The Hills we planted 7 years ago. We have recently purchased a movie theater that we're completely rehabbing and going to turn it into our very first a venue that's not mobile, so it'll be we're excited about it.
And this is a 35,000 square foot facility.
Yeah.
This is no small undertaking.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, it's going to be great. Going to be great. So, listen, if you're ever either in North Mississippi and in Corinth area or in Nashville, you need to make sure if you're there on a weekend that you visit one of these great churches, either the Hills in Nashville or Church of the Crossroads here in Corinth, because you will be blessed.
Absolutely.
If you want to see how it's done right, then you get to these places, and it's going to be a great time. So thank you, John, for joining us. The topic that we have tonight for us, I'm excited about this topic because I believe it's perhaps one of the most basic, core leadership development conversations that you may have ever tuned in and watched. And I want to give a shout out to Paul Cook, who is our instructor for internships. And Paul, we're going to do your material tonight. And so we just thought about there's no way we could improve on it. So listen, you killed it. And it's great. It is great stuff. And we feel like, as a matter of fact, John, you and I were talking just off camera how you wanted your entire leadership team
Absolutely.
to
I'm going to send this right to our leadership team.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many things that I would say to them, but just put in great verbiage.
Yeah, it is. And you know, all of us are team builders. If you're in leadership, and some of you are already doing that at your churches, and some of you are part of a team that someone is building. And so we understand the dynamics of teams and how there are different players on the team that have different gifts and skills, and how you need diversity on the team if you're going to win a championship. The fact is, it's fundamentals that win championships. It's not just that one superstar franchise player. Seldom is it one player that can carry the entire team to a championship. The fact is, you need an entire group on the team that's carrying their load, each one playing their position, each one with the fundamentals to be able to contribute to the win for the entire whole. And so that's what we're going to talk about tonight. We're essentially talking about the values. This is how I'm summarizing the values that each team member needs to really contribute to the success of the team. And so get your notes and your pens out and get ready to text in some of those questions, and the chat lines are open, and so we'll be monitoring those. We also want to give a shout out to our production team back in Arkansas, and there's also Landon Galloway, who is the executive director of Destiny Leadership Institute, that's watching in Texas. So we love you guys. Thank you for your great help. All the production team here that's making it possible. God bless you. So let's talk about it. We have a simple array of values that Paul has distilled for us that every team needs people like this on their team.
Yeah.
A number of years ago, I was with a group in Kentucky, and we just kind of played this game together, and we talked about if you were going to develop a dream team, what are the qualities and characteristics that you would want to have by your people on your team? And it was interesting what was on that list. I mean, all kinds of things like passion and loyalty and commitment and all of those things. But I think Paul has actually taken it to another level, and he's distilled for us a great list. And so we're going to throw it open, and then we're just going to talk our way through it. If we don't get through the entire list in our hour, then we're going to make that available to you as a download, and you can get that and finish the list yourself, but you'll essentially get the idea. The very first one, guys, that he mentioned is called responsiveness. Probably every one of us have been frustrated by sending a text or an email to someone on our team that we need to hear from, and they're not responsive to us. Is that, right? I don't know whether it ticks you off, but that ticks me off.
Yeah, it is. It's frustrating.
Yeah. Have you ever had an experience like that, John?
I have. Yes. Yes, I have. You know, and for me, what it does for me is that response comes back, and it's about me being able to close that window. And that when we were using Windows a lot, and right. You know, if you had too many open at one time, it slows your computer down. And so that's what I tell our team is, if I don't hear back from you, I've got all these windows that I've got open, and it starts slowing me down. And instead of making me follow up, follow back up with me, let me know.
That's really good.
Well, thank you.
Honestly, that's awesome right there. Too many windows. Don't be an open window for some leadership's person's computer that's trying to get something done. Jared, what do you think about that?
Well, I think from maybe as serving a leader, and I get to serve with, like what you talked about with our lead pastors, which are my parents, and which is awesome with our team. I think one of the biggest things with my dad and being under his leadership is a lot of times he's flying a little bit higher than me. And so when he's wanting to contact and he's wanting some things that he needs talked about, and I don't respond that way, and I've got my responsibilities, there's something that could be holding something a lot bigger that I don't even know.
Yeah.
And so what's big in my mind necessarily is not the most important thing. Yes, it is important, but it's not just as important as that. So from a member's perspective is that I bring value to him. I bring value to you when you call me, when I respond quickly, because you know that what you have on your heart and what you're leading this, he's leading this. If I'm valuing that, then I know that he knows, hey, they got me. Yeah. I'm a part. They are believing in me as we know that in the vision that we have going forward.
Absolutely. And you know, sometimes all I need is a thumbs up. Just let me know you got the message.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
Great example. I just told our team to text me. I got a text from Justin just then saying we look great on camera, awesome. By the way. So fantastic. Good responsiveness, Justin.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. You know, don't be that person that is asleep at the wheel. The fact is, if you're going to be a great team member, you need to learn the etiquette of responding quickly and responding. And I would say this, if you're looking for a bit of advice from an old dog, and that's what I'll consider myself, but I've been working with leaders a long time, I would suggest that you respond in the medium that you were connected with. In other words, if they send you an email, then email them back. If they send you a text, then text them back. If they send you a call, then you take that call. And if you can't for some absolutely impossible reason, then as soon as you can, call them back. And so a good rule of etiquette is just to respond in the level and in the way that they reached out to you, but make sure that you respond. I love what Paul said. Fast turnarounds on email, text, and calls from subordinates make the direct report leader know that he or she is a high priority in that situation. Right. And it really helps a leader to know that they have your attention.
I think for our team, it got a little confusing because sometimes when people text me, they just expect an immediate response for some reason with text. And if I'm in the middle of a meeting, it's hard for me to do that. Yeah, you want an immediate response. Well, so what I did is I told our team, if you need something immediately, text is fine or a call. But if it's something I've got to look at, make a decision, send that an email. So I think for leaders, it's great to let your team know the best way you want to. But if your leader doesn't tell you, that should be a question that each of us should be asking our leader? How would you like for me to communicate with you?
I think that's absolutely great. And I know when I'm asking for information, it helps when it's appropriate for me to get a timeline back, not just to get an open-ended response, but like, how fast is this going to happen? When is this going to be ready? So don't just respond with a short, curt answer, but respond with an answer that gives enough information to where that leader knows that the situation's being handled. Yes. And man, we could talk all night about that, but the fact is there are a lot of these and they're all great. So we want to move on to the next one. Be proactive and not just reactive. And I'll set that up a little bit with his paragraph of explanation. Reactive team members wait for instructions instead of seeking out the leader for enough information to move forward. They tend to blame the system or the circumstances for a lack of attention, while proactive team members will not be held hostage by circumstance. In other words, take the initiative. That's what this is saying to me.
Well, something we say is see the need, meet the need. So if you see it, if there's a need, go ahead and meet the need. And I think one of the best ways to be proactive and not reactive is to look at everything through the filter of serving. If you look at every situation through the filter of being a servant, you start looking at the little details, like, does he have water? Are there enough seats at the table? Where are they going to park? Is the car filled up with gas? Like, those little things become a big deal. The other day, we had someone coming into our church to visit with us, and I was out cleaning my car and just getting it all ready. And I made a statement to our team. We all need to impress somebody. I think we all need that in our life. Mm-hmm. We need someone in our life that we're trying to impress. And I think that keeps a servant mentality. And I think if you keep a servant mentality, then you're going to be proactive. And as a leader, I would rather tell somebody, hey, back off. That's a little too fast, than it would me having to tell them.
And I think that goes right along with a great sermon I heard one time from Pastor Mike Hayes when he talked about secrets only servants know. That there are certain secrets that only people who have a servant's heart know. And as long as you feel compelled to lead instead of serve, there are going to be things blocked out in your life that you're not ever going to fully understand. There are revelatory mysteries that will be unlocked in your life. And I know with all of you at DLI, you hear me say a lot, and I know Landon echoes that idea that none of us are called to lead. Not a single one in this room are called to lead. We're all called to serve. Yeah. And the reason we have a leadership institute, what's that all about? Well, the reason we have a leadership institute is because servants gain influence. And when they gain influence, we need to help them understand how to steward the influence that God has given them in the process of their service. And so just remember that none of us are called to lead. We're all called to serve. And when you serve, God gives you influence. Jared, what are you thinking?
Well, I think that part of that is being in that service is also being observant. And so you observe your leader, observe that person that, whether it be a team leader, would be your senior pastor, that you're finding yourself anticipating what those needs are and observing some of their habits, some of the things that they do, because the deal is this, part of that servant's heart can be birthed out of what you're watching. You're not watching to focus on what benefits you. You're focusing this mindset of what benefits them. I know that when I was getting to serve you, there was a couple of particular things I just didn't know, so I asked. And when I asked, then I made sure I wrote those down, because now that was my number one focus, that I was going to make sure that that you're going to have a meal right after you got done preaching because you didn't like eating breakfast first. You know, like there's just a couple of simple things that you wanted to show up in the first song and not anything prior to. So I was ready in the car, ready to roll. But it was asking those questions, being observant, so that I now could be proactive and not just reactive. Also, you know, if you're in those meetings, say you're in a staff environment, also too, you know the direction of your church and you've been communicating with your pastor. And so there's some questions that you just need to already know the answers.
Man, that's great.
And not just being able just to kind of wait on the direction. Yes. And if you begin to act on those answers, you're going to be given a little bit more responsibility, some more leadership opportunities, because you're taking the initiative and not just waiting for for tasks to be assigned.
That's so good. Absolutely. And that was always your heart. You had this amazing servant's heart. I love what Pastor John said about looking at every situation through the lens of a servant. That's awesome. Write that down. Don't forget it.
I like you said lens. I use filter, but I like lens. I'm going to write that down.
Yeah.
Lens
filter
better.
works, whatever the Holy Ghost
with
tells
the
you.
Instagram generation, we got to stay up with them too.
Yeah. The next thing on the list, because we're working through our list, remember these are qualities and values of highly efficient, highly effective team members. The third thing on our list is support the rest of the team. And this is a big one. I mean, leaders who only attend events and only support ministry in their lane are not apt to be high impact leaders.
Right.
In other words, it's not, hey, we all want people to show up when it's our deal.
Yeah.
But when you can show up as part of the team, when someone else is getting the credit or someone else is taking the initiative and you're willing to be part of the solution, part of the answer, then you're always going to increase your impact. He goes on to say, Paul does, it is rude to expect others to support your efforts while you not returning the favor. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Stay engaged in a meeting. Listen to this. This is awesome. Stay engaged in the meeting after your items have been marked off the docket.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so my departments are covered, so I'm going to sit here, but I'm checking out. Don't do that. That's not the kind of leader that's going to have this high impact. And we've all dealt with people like that, right? It's like, stay in the moment. Stay in the moment.
This is one area that I'm so thankful. Here at Crossroads, if I can just give a little bit, our team is one of the best teams of supporting one another. And a lot of them are here in the audience right now. And we serving alongside of each other is something that we put a lot of pride in. And that because pride is the thing that says it's all about one person. It doesn't have to be the senior. A lot of times the senior pastor gets the whole one person thing. But it can be a team member saying, well, it's all about me, like it was just saying, in my specific lane. Whether that be a worship or a youth ministry or a children's, that this is all about filtering or through that lens that you're talking about, through that way. But asking those other team members, supporting the rest of the team. Hey, how can I help you? How can I be a part? Staying up late, being able to help out with that event. Do you need help setting up tables? Do you need whatever you need to be a part of? It just goes right back to being that servant's heart and being team-oriented. There was no, we always hear it. My dad was a coach. There's no I in team. Everybody has a role, and we all have to fulfill that role to the maximum ability to accomplish exactly the vision of the house that you are a part of. And so just making sure that you are supporting each team member and lifting them up is just, oh, man, that's it's a big deal. That's a big deal.
I've been in your staff meetings. You guys rock it. I mean, there's no doubt about that. That the culture, and really what we're talking about is creating a culture, because you can be part of dismantling a culture or advancing and perpetuating a culture. And when a church is involved in a servant's heart type attitude and culture, you don't want to bring some meism into that dismantles that. You want to make sure that you are a propagator of the culture that exists. And John, so how do you feel about it when people do this sort of thing?
Well, something we started doing, we have 3 services now, and we have asked all of we call them L1 leaders, to attend all 3 services. Mm-hmm. And it's for that reason right there. So people can see them a part of all of it. And we have some that's hard. It's hard for them, but it's a decision that we made because we want this exact same. Another thing we say is that's not my job. Nobody ever should say that at our church.
Absolutely. That's
not my job. That's your lane. If staging team is, we're set up and tear down as a church now. And, if staging team is low, then worship team's helping them. Our kids team is helping them. That's just the way it's supposed to be.
Yeah. It's everybody's job. Everything is everybody's job.
I love that.
And there are certainly people are assigned responsibilities. And you remember, as we've talked about leadership throughout your curriculum, that authority in the kingdom is not power, it's responsibility. And so certainly there are times that you have a principal responsibility, and that's your lane. But the fact is, when we all share that responsibility, the work becomes so much easier, and our team becomes so much more efficient. So support the rest of the team. And it kind of segues us into a couple that are very nuts and bolts about how to communicate. So we've talked essentially about being responsive, taking the initiative, about being proactive and not sitting back waiting for someone else, but taking that initiative, supporting the team. But the next thing that Paul brings to our attention is how to talk to leaders. And he says, talk to, not about other leaders.
So good.
Talk to, not about other leaders. We all know what dissension and that sort of thing, backbiting, can do to a team. It can dismantle the most effective, skilled team, can come apart at the seams when there's that kind of attitude. He goes on to say, often we err on how we handle our disappointments in other players or leaders. The courage to have difficult conversation becomes an art form that is highly beneficial to the team. Talking about someone rarely solves a problem or incites growth, but lovingly talking or discussing, lovingly doing that and bringing the issue to their attention really helps. And what do you guys have? What would your recommendations be? Jared, let's start with you. If there's a problem and someone that you have hoped would really come through didn't, how do you have that conversation? I'm not just talking about as a senior leader. I'm talking about as part of the team. How do you handle that?
Well, hopefully honesty is the number one thing, to have that conversation. As a leader, to be able to receive the conversation. As a member, to be able to have the conversation. It's all talks with communication, and that you are brave enough, as far as as a member, to be able to be honest and to be able to share that. Also, as a leader, to be open enough to receive that. And I know we're going to get there here in a second, but to receive that conversation to be able to happen. One of the problems that is so big is that when you share and you begin to talk about another team member, and it may not be a leader, it could be another team member or another leader. Not only are you creating division among your team, you're also it's a mirror and a reflection of your character and who you are. And that in of itself is not the way that Jesus taught us and by his example. But he wanted us to be able to go to someone else if there's a fault or something, there's an area that needs to be needed, and you go to them in love and you bring up that area that needs to be worked on. But when we begin to share against our other leader or talk about them, we're creating dishonor, we're creating division, and we're also sharing that we're not able to be trusted. And we're not able to honestly be able to be a leader within ourselves.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's just, it's not and difficult conversations and leaderships are going to happen. If you're a part of a team, they've got to happen, but they can happen the right way. And a lot of those in that right way is in private conversations that you have on one-on-one, not in big groups. You're not tearing them apart or anything of that nature.
Absolutely, and then we'll get to that. There's a whole category just for that. John, do you have anything to add in that sense?
I'm an encourager. That's my gift. So difficult conversations don't come easy for me.
Right.
It's something that I definitely have had to work on, and it's been great because we have a team that are continually telling me, "Tell me, let us know if we're not doing something right. We want to know, Pastor." Absolutely. And so that's made it easy for me. So I would say that if you are a person that your leader is a high I, or their difficult conversations aren't easy, give them the permission to have those conversations with you, because it's for your betterment. They want to make you a better person.
It is, absolutely. And I think when you're dealing with conflict in general, I hear that question a lot and have a fair amount of difficult and hard conversations. I think you always look to meet it where it meets you. And the first place you want to engage it is privately. Always default to a private conversation. I mean, that if I have an issue with somebody that didn't follow through, or he mentions about disappointing, if there's someone who didn't show up on time or violated one of the values of the team, I'm not going to call them out in a public setting. That's totally inappropriate. And so I'm going to look for a private moment to have that conversation. And it may be that it's not even my place to have that conversation with them. So this is a delicate issue. But yet, if we're going to have great teams, we have to be able to resolve issues like this. But I'm going to just say, do it carefully and do it cautiously and do it lovingly. Make sure that love prevails and that there's no part of you when you feel like you have to bring this to someone's attention. Make sure there's no part of you that feels better about yourself by showing them that they didn't measure up.
That's a great point.
So check your attitude.
So good.
Yeah.
One thing I'll say, I know we need to move on, but I keep notes in my phone. We've got some of our leaders probably watching now, so now you know one of my secrets. I keep notes in my phone that are tweaks that I'd like to see them be better at this. Sometimes the mistake I'll make, though, is I'll let that list get long. And then when I sit down to have a conversation with them, I just unload all of it.
Yeah.
And instead of dealing with those things as they come along, I find that's much better. And you learn that, and I love that Paul used the illustration of an athletic team. I mean, that's how you deal with it on an athletic team.
Right.
The coach calls it out right there, or the team call it out right there. So I think dealing with things, the most someone can handle to change is one or two things at the most.
Absolutely.
They can't handle 7 bullet points of what and it feels like a barrage and feels like an attack. So.
You know, when you think about coaching, I remember watching back in the days that Lou Holtz was coaching on the sideline, and I was always amazed that these big, monstrous linemen would come over to the sideline having made a mistake on the field. And, I mean, he'd grab them by their face mask and rattle their face. You know, they don't do that much anymore, but I've seen him you just see him shouting in their face. And I'm thinking, this guy could break you in two. Why would he let you do that? Well, the reason is because there was a coaching culture established before a failure happened. And if we have a coaching culture developed, then people expect correction. Then instead of a criticism, correction is interpreted as a coaching moment where I will be better. And so I think that's really a strong word that I would encourage you with. If you're part of building a team and you're saying, man, how do I do it? Well, before there's a conflict that arises, create a culture. And you say, okay, how do you do that? Well, like with our Destiny team, I mean, these folks hear from me every year. We do annual reviews, and our team is long-term. They've been with us a long time, but even though they've been there a long time, we try to do an annual review where they expect me to identify strengths and weaknesses. And when you're kind of expecting it, it's not nearly as difficult to stomach, you know, because you have that sense of they're not just going to identify where I failed or where I didn't hit that hole right or didn't make that move I was expected to. The fact is they're going to look at some of the great things I've done and then coach me in the areas of weakness. And so I would say conversations are so much easier to have when you have a coaching culture.
So good.
Coaching culture. Let's move on. The next thing he mentions, remember, we're talking about qualities and characteristics, values, if you will, of team members that really make them great and help build championship teams. The next thing that Paul has put for us here is know what not to miss on your calendar.
So
oh, my
important.
goodness. Isn't that good?
It's so good.
That's good. And here's how he sets it up so we can set up our conversation about that. Your coaches, leaders need you to be at their side at key events and projects. In other words, if it's important enough to go on the church calendar, then it's important enough for you to be there, unless it is just exclusively not for everyone. If it's for everyone, then you need to be there. There are times you need to know what you should attend and what you shouldn't attend. And so he goes on to say, keep your, none of us can make everything, but before you plan out your schedule, be sure to consult with your leaders and don't cancel it on them at the last minute.
So true. I mean, we have what I call don't miss Sundays, and we just let all of our team. We need all hands on deck for this one. And something that we started doing is we have even our volunteer leaders request time off. So just like you would with a paid,
absolutely, yes.
Our volunteer leaders send in a request to say, I'm going to be gone this week, and we look at it and look at the calendar. And most of the time, of course, I mean, what can we do? We can't tell them they have to stay.
Right.
But there have been times we go, look, if you can because they may not know something's coming up. And so we'll say, look, if you can pick another time, it would be great if you do, because this is a really big day for us. So I think that's important.
That's still about culture.
It is.
Honestly,
yeah.
you create all of these mechanisms by creating a culture.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that we do as a team here is that it's kind of like you're the first one to know, and so we have our team leaders that are over any team lead, and then our small group leaders. They know what's on the schedule 2 months before, so we send out these things on a weekly, bi-weekly basis, depending on how much information is there. So they know what the calendar looks like and what we have on our specific, whether it be big Sundays or throughout the events, and what expectations are to be a part. And so what that does is it helps us all be on the same page. But when you're talking about culture, it's also our responsibility as members of the team to know the calendar. I mean, there's one thing I had to do, and one of the guys, he's right here in front of me, Brian. I had stuff on a digital, and it was all just everywhere. And he challenged me to grab a paper calendar, and it's meant everything for me over the last 8 months, because now it's all written down. It stays with me at all times, so that everything's in priority for our lead pastor, and then also what team members that is in my teams that I oversee and that I'm watching over, what they need from me as well. And so it's kind of going this know what not to miss on the calendar. A little bit has to do with your organization as a leader and team member, and showing value to your team, your organization that you're a part of, that they are so important that you won't miss unless there's just something that's that there's something that's important that you have to be at.
Yeah, I love what you said, Jared, because digital is not always better. It's not always more efficient. We have bought into that idea that digital is always more efficient, and it's not always. In the doctoral program I was in, one of our professors was a brilliant guy that had done some of the research and development for NASA on like the space missions and those things. And his specialty was redundancy. And let me tell you, oh my gosh, that class. His book was about this thick, and it was called Proactive Leadership. And about 300 times, he told us the same sequence of things that make great systems. And that's why NASA used him, because he talked about the value of redundancy. And honestly, we have a digital master calendar for Destiny, but then I love to write stuff down on my paper calendar. And I found that if I write it down, I'm much more likely to remember it than if I just type it into a digital spot that I don't see it. I need to be able to look at that entire month at a glance. It helps me. Plus, I'll tell you something else. If you're in a staff meeting and people see you write it down, it will tell them that what you just put in your calendar is important. And you may transfer it to a digital calendar. That's what we do. You may transfer it to a digital calendar later, and that's fine. But it's great to take an opportunity to write it down, fill in the blank, get you a calendar that shows a month at a glance, and be able to make those notes, because it communicates a message to your team and it will help you remember.
Right. Can I say one more thing?
Absolutely.
For some of you that are on a team, and as far as team members, one of the greatest things you can have, especially if you're planning events, one of the greatest things you can do is ask your senior leader or the leader above you, is there anything happening that would cause this to be in a conflict with an event that's happening in the church or the organization? And you lead that conversation first before you plan whether it be a big youth night or a dinner or a parent meeting or whatever it may be. Just go ahead and ask first, especially if some of these things that we've talked about is not happening, as far as first, like these emails and things. You can ask. You can always ask, and that will help you prioritize your calendar appropriately.
Absolutely. It's great stuff. All this stuff is great. And, I know that we're throwing a lot of things at you, and we're going to make sure that you have this download and get these bullet points and these paragraphs to just help you study and summarize it. But the fact of the matter is, if you're thinking, wow, this is a lot. But this is the difference between mediocre teams and championship teams.
Right.
This is what makes the difference. When you have a team filled with people that are on their game and have refined their stewardship of their influence. Remember, that's what leadership is. It's stewarding the influence that God has granted you in your service. When you realize that it matters not just to you, but to other people, how you react to these things, it will increase your influence and God will expand your capacity as a leader. The next thing he talks about is staying in the meeting. He says, be careful about being digitally distracted. That kind of goes right in with what we're talking about. Be careful about being digitally distracted by handling email or unrelated text in a meeting. In other words, we go back to, it's a little redundancy here, but stay in the moment. Stay in the moment. And how many of us have done that? I've done that. I've picked up my phone at the time that I shouldn't. Sure. And one of the things with interns, some of Kendall Bowman's here in the meeting with us tonight. He's number 15. It's traveled with Kath and I over the years. And in that orientation, one of the first things I tell them is if you're sitting at a table with a senior leader, put your phone away. Never, ever, ever look at your phone or go to Facebook and scroll while a senior leader in your presence is talking, whether it involves you directly or not. Right. Because there's nothing worse than trying to lead a meeting when people around you are digitally distracted.
I agree.
Amen.
It sends messages. It sends, especially, you said representing millennials. I think I'm out of that, actually. I'm close. I'm not sure.
So old.
This is a relative term to a guy like me. It's like anybody below me is like a millennial, right? Or something.
But I'm crazy if you're sharing our lead pastor and my dad. Hey, this is another thing that I did. I had to do this. I've got a little notebook. I had to do this too because it was almost habitual. It was almost a habit. Like, what are some first things that you do when I lay in bed? I grab my phone. If I'm in a thing, like it's almost habitual things that you're doing because it's almost our life is here. But for a senior leader, it sends a message, especially whether it be a computer, whether it be an iPad. There are some things that there's some engagement, and sometimes if we're engaged in other things, the message, it could be good things. The message that it's sending is what you're saying holds no value.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And we don't know what's about to come out of their mouth. And it may be something we really need to hear. And if we're sending that message, how does that make, this whole thing is about lifting up your leader as a team member. That's and right. If we send that message, what is being lifted, what's being communicated to the senior leader or to the leadership that's, you may be doing, you may be a part of a children's ministry and your children's director is sharing their heart that they've been preparing for so long. And they get their whole team together and then we're disengaged because we're getting ready to do a Snapchat, So what message, let that filter what you're sending to that leader. What message are we sending to the leader when we're distracted digitally? Even if it's habit, it doesn't still make it correct or it's right. It's a right practice.
And it doesn't mean it's not sending a message. Even though you may not intend for it to be, it doesn't mean it's not sending a message that you don't want to send. Now, let's just pause for a second and let me just suggest to you, if you would like to begin to send some questions in, the chat lines are open. Students especially, we encourage you to send some questions in. You got great wisdom here on the panel, and these guys will speak to that.
Especially on this side.
On that side especially, and on this side. And so I'm just
more gray over there.
These guys are swinging for the fence. I'm just pitching the ball today. So send us a question, chat them in, and we'd like to know. Production's telling me that we need questions, and we're going to have a few minutes at the end for some questions and answers. So we want to engage you as much as we possibly can. All this stuff has been so great. Honestly, and the list goes on. We're going to make it available to you. One of the things, though, that I did want to mention, I think it's really cool, and this is the way I'm going to say it. He says, on the fix, or essentially the idea behind it is if you're coming into a meeting, be pre-planned. Help me be a solution to a problem today. It's like if I'm coming into a meeting, look for an opportunity to not just say, yeah, and did you know this? And yeah, and we get this problem, yeah. How about going in with the attitude that maybe you have the solution, and try to be a solution to a problem that the team is going to be confronted with in that meeting, and take that attitude of being the answer being the answer to someone's problem or someone on the team, because that's what really, that's how great teams are formed. And so, John, what do you think about it? Isn't it great to have people around you, and you have a great team and a staff?
Yeah.
It's something to have people that are looking for an opportunity to meet a need or fix a problem.
Absolutely. And he says right before that one, have a suggestion with your complaint. I think those two go together.
Absolutely.
We have it happen a lot where someone comes up and they have an idea, and it may be a great idea, but they don't walk away with a solution to the issue. And so it's one more thing on me. And I honestly don't need one more thing on me.
Right.
And so I think when someone shows up and they not only do they have, okay, I think this is something we could tweak, that we can make better, I can feel the weight of it, and then all of a sudden they go, and I have an idea how to do that.
Awesome.
And I'm like, thank you, Lord. Yeah, and so it's owning the fix. It's the perfect way to say that.
And you'd rather your leader slow you down than try to pull you along.
Absolutely.
And so being a part, always our pastor always said, don't present a problem without some type of a solution.
Absolutely.
And so be solution focused. Be solution focused, because sometimes, like you said, John, you're a senior leader in that. It's almost like they're adding to the baggage that's problems. So be a part of working together to on the fix exactly what it says.
Yeah, and I really like that idea, but I would want to add a caveat to it. Don't be that pouting team member that if you offer a solution, realize that hold it loosely. So don't be that pouting team member that you said, I saw a problem, I had a solution, and they didn't want to do my deal. And so for the next 2 meetings, you're kind of perturbed, and we've all been around folks. I don't want to blow your theological halos off, but people don't like you being on the team if you're always mad about something or always offended about. Be unoffendable. Offer a solution, but be just as quick if someone says, well, there's a reason that won't work, or that we've, proverbially tried that. If that's a legitimate response, then say, hey, it's okay. Don't marry yourself to a solution. Be a solution suggester, but don't get mad if people say no.
Don't get married to the idea.
That's so true.
I like that. You could have said that, and that saved me that 30 seconds.
I copied somebody else.
I think Scott Jones says something to their team, and I'm trying to remember it, that they're a team that are willing to do anything, everything, or nothing. So if we don't need you to do anything, you're not going to be upset about that. I think it's a great way to say it. Something we tell our team, and you've taught me this. You taught us to give people roles and responsibilities instead of titles, because what happens is you become very territorial with those titles, and then if you get left out or out of the loop. So something we tell our team all the time is no more Eeyore. You remember Eeyore from Winnie the Pooh?
Yeah.
Oh,
it always happens.
We say it all the time. No more Eeyore. So we don't want anybody pouting, walking around, dragging it. It just doesn't work. And something that Paul says in this is, I feel like when we say Paul says, I feel like we're referencing Apostle Paul.
Yeah, he's up there. He's up there.
Something that Paul Cook says is no pouting, passive-aggressive, or harsh response. And I think that's really important as well.
Absolutely. So much great stuff here. And we have a few questions coming in. One of them's kind of easy to answer. Samantha has this question. I listen to the Hills podcast every week. Does Church of the Crossroads have a podcast?
We do not have a podcast.
Wait a minute. I want to ask Samantha. Samantha, if you're listening to our podcast, then why are you asking for their podcast? Are we not fulfilling a need?
Everything you ever need to know.
Some great wisdom on this side.
Hey, but you do archive your audio and video, right?
Yes. So we do archive those through live stream, but all of our services are on Facebook Live that you can see as well.
Well, that's what she's referring to with
so,
us, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, you can.
So yes, they do.
Church of the Crossroads.
Another great question. Another great question comes in from Chris Bell. And we could talk about this all night. I would like to know when and how to begin to delegate responsibility. In other words, when do you think, let me recouch the question. When do you think someone's ready that you can begin to delegate more responsibility?
When do I think the person's ready?
That's correct.
Or
Yeah, in other words, I would like to know when and how should I begin to delegate responsibility.
so
It's got to be about the receiver, because that's, the person that you're delegating to.
yeah, except one time I asked one of my pastors if I could get an assistant, and he said, "Why do you need an assistant? You know, why do you?" And I began to look at my life, and I didn't need to delegate anything at that point. So I thought maybe he was asking that. Yeah. So when can I delegate something to them is a question.
Yeah. How do I know when they're ready?
Man, I think a lot of that depends on what you're delegating to them. And, you know, for us, it's a trust factor. We give a little bit of responsibility and watch and see how they handle it. Something we tell any of our volunteers, anybody that's coming on. Matter of fact, we have a young man right now named Jesse. Jesse's only been saved for about 1.5 to 2 years, and is now interning with us and taking on a big load of our worship department. And when I met with Jesse about what he was going to do, I told him what I tell everybody: we have a long runway. We're not flying a little prop plane. We're flying a cargo plane. We want to be in life together for a long time. So it's a long runway. So if you get frustrated because we're not handing you a lot of responsibility or authority right away, then you may not make it with us for the long haul. It's just how we do things.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So we just delegate a little bit at a time, and then once they can prove they handle it, then we give them more.
Yeah, absolutely. You have something to add?
And I just think, as Chris, it's about their heart as well, and your heart. You know, we're not just, you know, we've talked about, you hear people talk about delegating a lot, but honestly, you're just empowering them to continue the vision to go forward.
That's great.
And so if your heart's in a place where you're just trying to give them something that you don't want to do, that's not the right heart. But you're also measuring the heart. If you want to empower them, then it's based on what John was talking about. The quality of their serving, how they're observing, how they're being the time that they're putting in. And whatever it be that you're trying to delegate or empower them, know this: keep the long term in mind and not just the short term.
That's right.
That you're seeing that their heart is pliable enough that you can be able to see them bring a major value to your organization, and being able to see how that heart factor is just so important. You can have the best. We were talking about this, me and you and Pastor Amos, that you can have the best talent in the world, but if you have the wrong heart, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so measure their heart, see how they serve the vision of the house, and then just empower them and let them go. Let them lead.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Both of those things are great. I would add to that when we delegate and we're giving people responsibilities, just to get a little biblical in this biblical Leadership Institute, Jesus said, if we're faithful over little, then he'll make us ruler over many things. And so there's a direct correlation to our faithfulness. Bottom line, don't try to ask people who are not faithful to do things that are critical, because there's a high chance that they're going to demonstrate that lack of faithfulness, and somebody's going to be frustrated. And so the second thing I would say about that is when you're doing that, give them a task to accomplish, not a position to fill. A lot of times we have a position and we try to find somebody to fill the position, when the truth is it would have been better if we had have given them an assignment to accomplish instead of a position to fill. Let them work their way in to a position. Let them work themselves into a position. Let them prove that they are an assistant pastor or prove that they are a worship leader. Because how many times we've given people positions and then we realize they were the wrong person for the job. If you give them a task to accomplish, and that's your first level of delegation, then there's a beginning and an ending. Instead of having to take them out of the position, it was just a measure. I'm going to give you this task for the next 30 days. And then we're going to reevaluate at that point. It gives you an opening and a closing, a beginning and an ending, without having to offend someone because you put them prematurely in a position and then had to remove them from the position. So if you'll give them a task to accomplish instead of a position to fill, your delegation will be much more successful. They'll be better off, and I promise you, you'll be happier. And there's no doubt about that.
Y'all need to be writing down those notes.
I am. I'll send y'all mine. That's so
Another
good.
question come at us from Jessica. As an administrator for a ministry, there are times that I'm expecting an important text or call. How do I handle this when I'm in a meeting? An important text or a call? That's a good question. So one of you guys want to weigh in with some advice there? Jared, you look like you've just, the aha moment went on. So,
Well, if you're expecting that, then you just lead that in the conversation. Just be honest. When you start the meeting, I know I do the majority of our counseling. And so if there's something that I try to always have my phone to the side, but if I know that pastors are going to be calling at a certain amount of time, or I know that there's a thing happening in the hospital, if it's something that's high level priority, then I'll lead with that. Hey, listen, before we get started, I just want you to know there may be a text or I get a phone call that maybe my kid's sick, that I may need to take. So I just want you to know ahead of time before we get going. I just want you to make sure you know that. Also, your senior leadership as well. If there's something that's coming in, you just pave it out. You can't expect everything, but you can. It's okay to at least let them know, so you're not sending the message that you're disengaged and you don't care about what they're saying. Just be honest.
Yeah, and I would just jump in with you, Jared, and say, if it's that important, then excuse yourself and leave the room. So don't take that call in the meeting. If it's something that warrants your dismissal, then explain to the people, ask, to be dismissed for a moment, and then step outside and take the call or the text. Anything else you'd add? Yeah. So we have about 5 minutes left, and this has been a fun conversation tonight. I hope you've had a good time. I hope you've learned some things, and we've had some good questions come in, and we're going to also make this set of full notes available to you so that you can pray over it, study it, because this is great stuff. Thank you, Paul, for great work putting this together. Again, Paul is leading that class for interns, and he's kind of overhauling our internship program and doing an awesome job, and we appreciate that. Guys, from what we've talked about tonight, if you were going to just summarize a good coaching 2-minute section in terms of what we've talked about, what would you suggest to someone who says, look, I'm part of a team and I want to be the best member of the team. I don't want to be the weakest link. I want to be a strong link in that team. What would you, in closing summary, what would you suggest?
Probably some of the things that you taught me and our pastor and my father's taught me is that Jesus came to serve. And we are not high enough or low enough to be able to serve just like Jesus. You taught me something as a member and as a leader, to never ask or require somebody to do something that you haven't done or that you're not willing to do yourself. And so the best thing you could do is to have not just the heart of serving. And I know we hear, as far as in my age, you hear a lot of things about serving. You're serving. But if you could do one thing and do that and truly lift up your leader and have the heart that Jesus even came to be able to serve others, then you're going to get encouragement. You're going to get opportunities that you never could ever imagine if you'll put yourself in a position to lift them up first. And if you'll lift them up first, and there's a statement here that says, do unto others as you have them to do unto you. If you lift them up first, then there will be opportunities that will come your way, but don't seek the opportunities without just seeking to be able to serve an almighty God that gave us the opportunity to love others, to be ourselves in a place that we can help people be better because Jesus is right there with them. And so if you can have that heart of serve and be pliable that you can be, Amen. That you can work with, you're not so stuck with the way that you do things that you can't work and being a part of a team. Be pliable to be able to work and to accomplish your role in the team. Be a part of the team. Be the team. Your leadership that is that all of our DLI students. I'm a DLI student. And did their internship in the whole 9 yards. If you're a DLI student, know this. You have the greatest team that's leading you right now, and especially your leadership of your church. And just be a part of the team. Soak everything that you can. Have a servant's heart, and just be the team. Just be the team.
Awesome, Jared. Awesome. Give a summary. What would you want them to take away today?
I think one of my mentors early on in my ministry pulled me aside one day, and he gave me some something I needed to tweak. I needed to work on. And the next Sunday, I followed his advice, and then after the service, walked to him and said, "How was that?" And he had big tears in his eyes, and he said, "You're a gifted person." And he said, "But your greatest gift is your teachability." And I never forgot that. And I would say the same thing to you. Be a teachable person. Be a sponge. We got a young lady in our church. I call her SpongeBob SquarePants, because she just soaks it up, man. Anything you say to her, she's taking notes. She's receiving it. I would just encourage you to be that kind of person. Be teachable. Be coachable. And something that I have found is that pastoring is permission-based. A lot of people want a good church and they want a good preacher, but they don't want a pastor. And the only time I step into a pastoral role with people are the people that come to me and say, "I want you to be my pastor. Right. I want you to speak into my life." So be that. I think Tommy Tenney said something one time that I loved. I think it was him. I'm gonna give him credit if it wasn't. He said, everything's reversed in the kingdom. Yes. A father picks their son in the natural, but in the spiritual, a son picks their father. And I think there's something to be said for that. You have to go to them, say, "I want you in my life. I want you speaking into my life," and be a teachable person.
That's all. Hey, man, such great stuff. And you've heard great wisdom tonight. And if I were going to just summarize, I would say, and kind of echo what both of these great leaders have said, be a student. Just determine that, yes, you're going to master certain skills, but remain a student all your life. Yeah. There is a humility from being teachable. That's essentially what you said. I was just studying the book of Philippians recently, and I was amazed at some of the greatest things the Apostle Paul said. He said in the book of Philippians. One of the things he said is for me to gain. For me, the concept of Christ. Now, what he's saying is not just, "Oh, I want to live for Jesus." That wasn't what he was saying. He viewed his presence in every situation as being the vehicle for the manifest presence of Jesus in that situation. How would it change our leadership responsibilities if we viewed every decision we made and every encounter we had as if we were the best Jesus that was going to be in that moment?
Yeah, that's so good.
Man, it would cause us to say, "Wait, would Jesus say that? Wait, would Jesus have that attitude? Wait, would Jesus have that?" No. Paul said, "For me to live is Christ." In other words, he said, "I'm dead. The Paul that lived, the Saul that became Paul, that person died on the road to Damascus. And now for me to live is to allow Jesus to have a vehicle to live in my life. And then there'll be a day, essentially, that I'll go to be with him, to die as gain. But until then, he's come to be in me." And that's what I would suggest to you, because it becomes the governor of what you do and what you say. It becomes the guidepost, the guardrails of your path as a leader and as a team member. It's the old adage, what would Jesus do? I hope you've enjoyed this tonight. You've been a great audience. And listen, we're going to be looking forward to the next time that we're together next month for the DLI webinar. And until then, we say God bless you. And guys, thank you so much. Thank you, Jared Hight. Thank you, John Ragsdale. And a lot of love going on the stage here. You know what I'm talking about. We love you. God bless you. We'll see you again next time.